We all have them, those nightmares that cling to you long after you wake up. The ones that leave you shaking, heart pounding, drenched in a cold sweat. They feel so real. You can almost smell, taste, feel the terror. I've had my fair share of nightmares, but none like the one about the cabin. It haunted me for years. Then it crossed over into my waking life. I know what you're thinking. It was just a dream, right? But what if it wasn't? What if our nightmares are trying to tell us something? What if they're a warning? The dream always started the same way. I'd be walking through thick, dark woods. The air was heavy, suffocating. The only sound was the beating of my own heart. Then I'd see it, a dilapidated cabin, barely standing, half hidden in the undergrowth. I knew I shouldn't go inside, but something drew me to it, an irresistible pull. Inside, the cabin was dark and dusty. Cobwebs hung from every corner. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and I could feel it, a presence, something evil. It was a crisp fall morning when I got the call. My buddy Billy wanted to go camping, get away from the city for a while. I found the perfect spot, he said, his voice excited. An old logging road deep in the woods, no one around for miles. My stomach twisted. I hesitated. Come on, man, don't be a scaredy cat, Billy laughed. It'll be fun, I promise. We packed up his truck and headed out. The further we drove, the denser the forest became. The sunlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy of leaves. I tried to shake off the feeling of unease that was creeping up my spine. It was just a coincidence, I told myself. It's just a stupid dream. Hours later, we were hopelessly lost. The forest seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction, a maze of trees and shadows. The logging road had dwindled to a barely there trail overgrown with weeds and fallen branches. It was as if nature itself was trying to erase any trace of human presence. I swear I knew where I was going, Billy muttered, frustration evident in his voice. His confidence from earlier in the day had vanished, replaced by a growing sense of panic. The sun was starting to set, casting long, eerie shadows through the trees. The forest, once vibrant and full of life, now felt like a different world, one filled with unseen dangers. We decided to set up camp. It was our only option as the light faded. We worked quickly, our movements hurried and tense. As darkness fell, the temperature plummeted. The warmth of the day was replaced by a biting cold that seeped into our bones. We huddled around the campfire, the crackling flames doing little to chase away the growing chill. The firelight flickered, casting dancing shadows on the trees around us. It was then that I saw it, a flicker of light in the distance, barely noticeable through the dense foliage. Through the trees, a faint light flickered. It was strange, almost otherworldly, and it sent a shiver down my spine. "What is that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. The forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for an answer. Billy squinted into the darkness. His eyes narrowed as he tried to make sense of the distant glow. "Looks like a light, maybe another campsite." We decided to investigate. Our curiosity was piqued, but there was also a sense of unease. As we got closer, the feeling of dread in my stomach intensified. Each step felt heavier, as if the forest itself was warning us to turn back. The light was coming from a cabin. It stood out starkly against the darkness, an unexpected sight in the middle of nowhere. A dilapidated cabin, half hidden in the undergrowth. It looked abandoned, yet the light suggested otherwise. My heart pounded in my chest. This couldn't be happening. The sense of foreboding was overwhelming, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Section 5. An unsettling discovery. The cabin was exactly like in my dream. The rotting wood, the crooked porch, the rusted tin roof. Even the broken window pane in the front door was the same. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. "Hello!" Billy called out, his voice echoing eerily in the stillness. No answer. He tried the doorknob. It creaked ominously but held fast. "Looks like nobody's home," he said, turning back to me. "Let's get out of here. This place gives me the creeps." But I couldn't move. I was frozen in place, my eyes glued to the cabin. It felt like I was being pulled towards it, like I was meant to go inside. Billy noticed my hesitation. "Zach, what is it?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "This place, ... IT, quote as familiar," I stammered, my voice trembling. "I've dreamt about this cabin." Section 6. Déjà vu. We cautiously approached the cabin. The air grew colder, the smell of decay stronger. Billy gave the door another push, this time harder. It burst open with a deafening crack, sending a cloud of dust billowing into the night air. The interior was shrouded in darkness, the only light coming from the moon filtering through the grimy windows. We stepped inside. The air was thick and heavy, like it hadn't been circulated in decades. Dust motes danced in the pale moonlight. I felt an overwhelming sense of déjà vu. Every creak of the floorboards, every cobweb-laden corner, every piece of decaying furniture felt eerily familiar. It was as if I had stepped foot inside my nightmare. "This is messed up," Billy muttered, his voice hushed. "This place feels wrong." Section 7. Trapped. We decided to explore, hoping to find some clue as to who the cabin belonged to, why it felt so familiar. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and every creak of the floorboards sent shivers down our spines. We moved cautiously, our flashlights casting long, eerie shadows on the walls. The first room was bare, except for a rotting table and a couple of chairs. The furniture looked like it hadn't been touched in decades, covered in a thick layer of dust and cobwebs. It was as if time had stood still in this forsaken place. The next room was a small bedroom with a dusty mattress on a rickety frame. The bed looked like it could collapse at any moment, and the walls were stained with age. It was hard to imagine anyone ever living here. As Billy stepped inside, the floorboards beneath his feet gave way with a sickening crunch. The sound echoed through the cabin, a grim reminder of the building's fragile state. He cried out, stumbling forward. His flashlight clattered to the ground, its beam flickering wildly. I rushed to help him up, but it was too late. The floorboards had already given way, and he was slipping further into the darkness. He had fallen through the floor, disappearing into the darkness below. The void seemed to swallow him whole, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. "Billy!" I shouted, my voice echoing in the confined space. Panic surged through me as I realized how deep the hole might be. "Are you okay?" A muffled groan was my only answer. It was faint, but it was enough to let me know he was still alive. I rushed to the edge of the hole and peered down. It was pitch black. I couldn't see him. The darkness was impenetrable, and my flashlight barely made a dent in it. "I'm coming down there," I yelled, my heart pounding in my ears. The thought of descending into that abyss was terrifying, but I couldn't leave him there. But as I took a step back, I realized with horror that the rest of the floorboards were giving way. I was trapped. The entire cabin seemed to be collapsing around me, and I had no idea how to escape. Panic surged through me. I was trapped in this nightmare cabin, my friend injured in the darkness below. The air felt suffocating, the darkness closing in on me. I had to get out. I had to get to Billy. Taking a deep breath, I forced myself to calm down. Panicking wouldn't help. I needed to think clearly. Looking around, I spotted a heavy wooden beam leaning against the wall. It was old, but it looked sturdy enough. With a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed the beam and began prying at a boarded-up window. The wood creaked and groaned in protest, but finally, with a splintering crack, it gave way. Fresh air rushed in, carrying with it the scent of pine needles and damp earth. It felt like a lifeline. I squeezed through the narrow window opening, ignoring the splinters that tore at my clothes. Landing on the soft earth outside, I took a moment to catch my breath, my heart still pounding in my chest. I had escaped the cabin, but Billy was still trapped inside. I had to get help. Pulling out my phone, I realized with a sinking feeling that there was no signal. Of course not. I was about to give in to despair when I heard it. A faint sound carried on the wind, a voice calling for help. It was coming from the woods behind the cabin. Hope surged through me. Billy was alive. Following the sound of his voice, I plunged into the darkness, my fear momentarily forgotten. I found Billy a short distance away, leaning against a tree, his face pale and contorted in pain. The moonlight cast eerie shadows on his face, making the scene even more surreal. His eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of relief and lingering fear. He had managed to crawl out from under the collapsed floorboards and find his way outside. The effort had clearly taken a toll on him, but his determination to survive was evident in every painful movement he made. He had a sprained ankle and a few cuts and bruises, but he was okay. The injuries, though painful, were a small price to pay for escaping the horrors we had faced inside that cabin. We made our way back to the main road, our steps slow and cautious in the darkness. Every rustle of leaves and snap of a twig made us jump. our nerves still on edge from the ordeal. We didn't talk much, but we didn't need to. The silence between us was filled with unspoken words, a shared understanding of the terror we had just escaped. We had both been through a terrifying ordeal, one that would stay with us forever. The haunted look in Billy's eyes mirrored my own, a silent testament to the nightmare we had endured. As the first rays of dawn broke through the trees, we stumbled out of the woods and onto the familiar dirt road. The sight of the road brought a wave of relief, signaling the end of our nightmarish journey. We had never been so happy to see civilization. The simple sight of the road, something we had taken for granted before, now felt like a lifeline pulling us back to safety. Looking back at the dark and silent woods, I couldn't shake the feeling that we had been lucky to escape with our lives. The forest, once a place of adventure, now seemed like a sinister entity that had tried to consume us. The nightmare cabin, with its eerie familiarity and malevolent atmosphere, would forever be etched in my memory. It stood as a grim reminder of the horrors we had faced and the strength it took to survive. The experience changed me. It made me realize that sometimes our nightmares are trying to tell us something. Maybe they're warnings, maybe they're echoes of past traumas, or maybe they're glimpses into another reality. Whatever they are, they deserve our attention. So the next time you wake up from a nightmare, heart-pounding, don't dismiss it as just a bad dream. Ask yourself, what is it trying to tell me? What am I afraid of? And most importantly, what am I going to do about it? Have you ever had a nightmare that felt too real? A dream that later came true or seemed to foreshadow real-life events? Share your story in the comments below. Let's explore the dark side of our dreams together.